In this video, I'm going to talk about how I turned $35,000 of savings into a total of $415,000 through real estate investing. Check it out. So when I first graduated from high school back in 2013, I initially had a plan to go to university. I wanted to work for a year, take a gap year, and use that savings to be able to fund my university education. During that time, I got a full-time job. Basically, it was paying me around minimum wage and a little bit more than that shortly after. And during that time, I was able to save 75% of my income. So I was living at home with my parents. I paid a little bit to my parents to contribute for food, but that was basically it. I was able to save the rest of that money. That ended up being around $25,000 after the first year and a couple of months. I was then able to partner up with my brother, and we were able to split the down payment on a condominium investment property. That property we bought for $240,000, and it had 5 bedrooms that we were able to rent out to students. That property now ended up appreciating in value currently to around $560,000 in value. Now the mortgage on that property is currently $400,000. We've done a refinance where we've been able to pull out a whole bunch of equity from that property. But in that property alone, what I have left in terms of equity is around $80,000, half of the $160,000 of the total equity that the property currently has. The second property I purchased, I only had $10,000 of savings. So at that point, I had used up $25,000 of my savings. I was now living with my parents in a home that they had purchased. So now I was contributing some money in rent, as well as getting a car. So I had, car insurance and the expenses that come with owning a car. So I wasn't quite able to save as well as I was previously. So by this point, I had $10,000 saved, and me and my brother were ready to purchase another property. So we ended up purchasing another condo in that same building. Now prices have gone up a bit, so we paid $280,000 for a 6-bedroom condominium rental. Because I didn't quite have the full 25-ish thousand down payment that I needed for my half of the down payment, I actually ended up borrowing $15,000 from my father. And the plan initially was that as soon as we purchased the property, I would then take out a line of credit that I had available at my bank at 4% interest, and I would pay him back and then just pay off that loan. But after buying the house, my dad basically told me, hey, if you're willing to pay 4% in interest on a line of credit to a bank, just pay me 4% instead. I don't really need the money right away. And I thought, sure, why not? So I've been paying him 4% in interest from the cash flows of this property for the last couple of years. Until recently, I just paid him back his entire investment. That property now is also worth around $560,000. The mortgage on this property is also $400,000 because we've done a refinance on this property as well to pull out some of the equity. And my share of the equity in this property is also around $80,000. So $160,000 in total between these two properties that I currently own with my brother. The third property that I purchased was completely by myself. So this is a property that I bought with some of the proceeds of that cash out refinance, and it's a duplex in the city of Welland. It was featured in one of my previous videos. This property is worth, in my opinion, around $525,000, and it currently has a mortgage of around $415,000. So it has about $110,000 worth of equity in this property. This is a property that actually has a piece of land that I can actually sever and potentially sell it to a builder. So there are some longer term upsides, so this value may actually increase over the next short while. However, the value I've put is basically what I think I can sell it for if I were to just put it on the market today. The fourth property that I own is one that I also purchased using the proceeds of the refinance. This is a property that is a duplex conversion in the city of Welland. And it's a property that I bought for $400,000 just a few months ago, but recently a comparable has sold for around $465,000. So I'm going to use that as the value of this property. Currently, it has a mortgage of $320,000. So I have about $145,000 in equity in this property. That's my down payment plus the appreciation. Now, I think that this property is going to be worth somewhere in the $525,000 to $550,000 range once I complete my renovations and make it into a legal duplex. But we're going to use the $465,000 value for now, bringing the total equity in that property to $145,000. Combine the equity on these 4 properties that I either own myself or with my brother becomes a total of $415,000. Now, if you notice something, other than the initial $25,000 I put into the first property and the second $10,000 I put in the second property, The rest of these properties were purchased without any of my own money spent out of pocket. I did end up paying off my father using my own savings, but I could very well have done that using the proceeds of the refinance. In this case, I just had the savings available, so I paid him back. Now, the cool part about this is even though I have $415,000 worth of equity, I actually own a total of $1.55 million worth of real estate, which that equity is the down payment of. I actually own quite a bit more assets than the equity that I have, meaning over the next 30 years, if I did nothing, if I didn't even put another cent into real estate investing, if I didn't buy a single property afterwards, within the next 30 years, if the properties stay the same value that they are now and the mortgages just get paid off by the tenants, I will have a real estate portfolio worth $1.5 million in equity. And if the value of these properties just go up, say 3% a year, which is a very conservative long-term estimate for real estate over the next 30 years, it will actually be worth close to $3.8 million. So over the next 30 years, I'm 25 right now, so I'll be around 55. That's a considerable amount of equity to have, even at that age. Now, if you're in your 20s, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give to you is just save as much money as reasonably possible. The younger you are, the more you can save and invest, it's going to make a massive difference over the long term. So in my case, what I have now in real estate, this $415,000, to me, it sounds like a massive amount. If I told myself this when I graduated high school, that I'd be able to create this by the age of 25, I wouldn't have believed it. However, the more valuable part of this equity is not necessarily the fact that it's this amount of money, but rather it's this amount of money at this stage in my life, because I still have another 30, 40, 50, 60 years that I can have this money invested and grow without needing to take it out to live or to use for any purpose. So by allowing it to have a long runway to grow, even at a more conservative interest rate, this amount can really become something meaningful. Like I mentioned, in 30 years, if the properties just appreciate at 3%, it can grow to $3.8 million. Now, 3.8 million then won't be necessarily worth what it's now, but it's still a significant amount of money without me having to put another dollar of savings. That's what I find the most craziest part, because I'm still focusing on saving money. I'm still, putting money aside into my TFSA, and I'm continuing to grow my investing. I'm taking out the equity from these properties. My hope is to roll them over, to grow a real estate portfolio of a considerable size. However, where it's at right now, the efforts that I've made to this point are enough to actually let me just ride it out if I choose to, and my retirement is fine. If you're in your 20s, definitely make a lot of effort into saving as much as possible. One of the unfortunate things that I find in many people my age is that when you get stuck in this cycle of going to university and getting student loan debt, and then maybe because of that you get a job to make those debt payments, by the time you're 22, 23, you don't want to go back to your parents' home to live, so then you choose to rent a place to get started. There are a lot of expenses that you have early on with these debt payments, and then maybe you buy a car that you finance, and then you borrow that, and then you're making payments on that as well. All of these decisions add up to the point where you are really tight in terms of how much you can save every month. My biggest advice is, in your 20s, especially the younger you are, try to find ways to, if you're going to college or university, find scholarships, find ways to pay for it, or, work in the summer, work after while you're studying, and find ways to pay it off as soon as possible. And if you're buying a car, buy a used car. Try to keep the cost, if possible, paid in cash. Try to keep the cost as low as possible, and just if you're willing to do it, go back and live with your parents if they have space for you, and try to just save as much money as possible, because what you save early on in your life can then grow into this massive amount. See, in my case, I've been able to save that initial $35,000, and it's just paying me dividends like now and probably over the next few years to come, because that money is just growing and growing and growing. I'm not even adding any more to it at this point. It's just able to grow. Even my real estate, my rental properties, I'm not necessarily saving up another down payment at this point. The properties are able to fund the next purchase and the next purchase and the next purchase. So it's able to really become a snowball and compound. Especially when you're getting started, try as much as possible to save, because it's just going to serve you so well. I hope you found that helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. And if you're looking to get started in real estate investing right now, since I got started in investing, prices have definitely increased a whole lot, which has helped me from an investing standpoint. But if I were in the same position now that I was when I started, it would definitely be harder to start. However, I found a lot of value in investing in the Niagara region, where prices are cheaper than the cities closer to Toronto. So if you're interested in getting started in investing, check out my guide to investing in the Niagara region. You can go to www.niagarainvestor.ca. I'll have the link in the comments below as well, to get your free guide. Check it out, and it has some valuable points about the Niagara region, why it's a great place to get started. And especially if you're someone getting started, you have just a little bit saved, definitely try to find ways where you can qualify for your first property and really deploy that savings into rental properties so that it can really compound and grow for you. So I hope you found this helpful. Until next time, all the best.